So as we speak, the Orange Menace is on the stand in his New York fraud trial on account of his shady business practices extending across many years, as well as recently, because in the end this man is a crime machine. He simply cannot live a day without committing a crime, and now it all has come home to roost. But I found it fascinating to hear these two individuals opining on what might happen on the stand today. And one on the left, Anthony Scaramucci, said that he thought Trump's experience with these types of situations would lead him to be cautious, to make sure that he didn't say things that would complicate the case or worse. He thought that Trump would hold himself in check. Michael Cohen, who is his ex-lawyer fixer, said, yes, I think he'll start that way, but as time passes, he's very likely to lash out and adopt his more favored, bombastic, arrogant personality, and so therefore engage in what amounts to self-destruction. Now, apparently, from what I've been reading, he's already done some of that. But the question is, what does the chart say about today and how things might turn out? And when we look at the situation, we see here the red line is showing today at midday for the East Coast, and so these are the positions of the planets. And we note when we look at the outer planets, the ones that move more slowly, they describe the overall pattern, which is quite negative given where Pluto is, for example. Pluto is still within range of this Venus by opposition, so it's not helpful. Eris is squaring the Saturn-Venus conjunction in the 12th sign and will continue to do so for quite some time. And then we notice the Uranus position is in a 150 to his moon. That's also not helpful. Jupiter in a fairly precise square, in fact you could say exact square to Pluto. This is going to incline him toward power plays, toward his arrogant side. The square is to Leo, which is his rising sign. That is how Leo behaves on the downside, and this guy behaves on the downside nearly always. So a Jupiter-Pluto square isn't helpful to him in this scenario. It will definitely incline him to let loose and say things that he shouldn't say. The Saturn near the angle, it's at 0-30 Pisces in a station, making it very intense, very close to this angle. This is very reflective of being in a litigious situation such as this, where he is trying to fight off something that is difficult, negative in the legal sense. The seventh sign is, along with the ninth, is where you see lawsuits, be they criminal or civil. So Saturn is very precisely placed there, and it's very problematic because it's nearly impossible to have Saturn this close to an angle and not feel fear or a certain amount of fear, feel restricted, feel frustrated, feel like the situation is quite difficult, which it is. No matter how much he brags, and bellows that it isn't, it is. It's a really tough situation. But now when we look at the faster moving planets to get a feel for the day, the precise day today, we see the Sun, Mars, and Mercury in Scorpio, and the Venus here in late Virgo, and the Moon over here in Leo. Now, first of all, the Mercury, notice that it is at 24.5 Scorpio precisely on his angle. When a planet is on an angle, just like the Saturn over here is on an angle, you feel it more. And once we talk about Mercury, Mercury is the talking planet. It's where you speak and communicate. This guy is a talker. He was born with the Mercury, in fact, out of bounds at birth. So he yaps and yaps and yaps. That's Trump. Put it on the angle, he's going to talk. This one is not helpful for restraint. It's not helpful at all. Saturn would be the restraint planet, and a normal person, which he's not, this man is not normal, he's far from normal. So Saturn there would normally incline a person to be cautious. But my feeling is in his case, the Saturn is going to show up as the frustration, the sense of restriction, and therefore not helpful to him in that sense. The Mercury completely unhelpful, being on the angle like that. That'll lead to talking. And then the kicker, the one that really points to the likely outcome is the Moon, because the Moon, as the fastest moving, happens to be in late degrees of Leo today. Earlier, i.e. prior to getting on the stand, goes through his Mars as the last planet that it contacts. Mars is a combative, aggressive, angry energy, which he, again, wears on his sleeve almost all of the time, because this Mars rising above the ascendant light like that is very, very strong, so it defines his vulgar, aggressive approach to life. The moon triggers it going through there, and then it moves toward the ascendant as the day is flowing along. So you see it here at noon, 2841. A bit later it'll cross through the exact ascendant degrees. This is going to highlight the Leo energy, the bombast, the arrogance, the essentially saying too much. So, in my opinion, when I assess the situation, I would agree a lot more with Michael Cohen than I would with Anthony Scaramucci. I think Trump today will almost certainly do something that will hurt his chances in this particular case. Now, I'll end with something that reflects an entirely different topic, which is that there are news coming out about how, despite all this, he is doing so well in the polls, including that he's catching up to Biden in certain states, etc. Why is this guy continuing to be so popular with his base and potentially with the entire country, though I strongly doubt that because we're way too early in the election cycle to be talking that way. But why is this happening? There I would point to the Neptune. The Neptune, where it's transiting, moving toward a station, it's now at 25 degrees. It's going to station near these degrees. That puts it in a precise trine to his Venus. And so that is keeping him popular. That is what Neptune can do. It's a very, very useful planet for maintaining your popularity. The problem is, as we go into next year, by the spring, this Neptune is further along and gets closer and closer to the end of Pisces. That is not at all helpful. This is where I've talked about in prior videos about his health, because by the time it gets to Mars, you see here the Venus is 2544, Mars is 2647. Once it starts to disconnect from the Venus by a trine, it starts to do a 150 to Mars and eventually a 150 to the ascendant. All of that happens in 2024 at the worst possible moment, because 2024 is when we're going to be in the thick of things in terms of the political season, but also for him in his legal battles. And so for now, it's holding him up. By the time we get to the spring of 2024, it is in a very unfriendly place. And aside from his popularity diminishing, which it would do by that kind of movement, the problem for him, the extremely dangerous problem, is that once it leaves the orb of the Venus and starts to connect to Mars in the ascendant, that's a health situation. That's what that aspect does. He's already getting some of that with the Uranus doing the 150 to the moon. But that'll happen next year as well as the Neptune being late like this and the Pluto being in late Virgo, or late Capricorn, because it will be doing a 150 to the ascendant. So, bottom line, if you're worried about his popularity in the near term, relax. All of this will shake out as we go into next year. But in the immediate term, in regard to the trial today, expect to hear self-inflicted wounds on account of what he's going to say, probably because prosecutors know that if they get under his skin, he won't be able to help himself.